In the evening of April 25, 1971, just on the outskirts of D.C. near the Maryland state line, 13-year-old Carol Denise Spinks was walking home from a nearby 7-Eleven, where she had been sent by her older sister to buy groceries. 6 days later, Carol's body was found in a grassy field behind a local hospital. Carol had suffered extensive physical and sexual abuse, and she was found without her shoes. The autopsy revealed that Carol had been asphyxiated. Her family and the local community were devastated, but this was only the beginning of a series of abductions and murders. This is the chilling tale of the Freeway Phantom. 3 months after Carol's body was discovered, 16-year-old Darlenia Denise Johnson was heading to her summer job at the Oxon Hill Recreation Center. Darlenia never made it to work that day. Some eyewitness reports placed Darlenia in an older model black vehicle, being driven by an adult black male. Despite the report, police were not able to locate the vehicle or Darlenia. 11 days later, Darlenia's body was found in almost the exact same place Carol's body had been found, in the grass behind the hospital. Like Carol, Darlenia had been abused and asphyxiated, and she was missing her shoes. To the outrage of the community, police revealed they had received an anonymous call from someone reporting the location of Darlenia's body nearly a week before the body was found by investigators. Even more shockingly, the caller had provided details of the body that only the killer could have known. Yet, for whatever reason, the police did nothing with this information for almost an entire week, which led to increased decomposition of the body from the July heat. The local community felt that the police were not taking these disappearances seriously, and that more killings were to come. They nailed it in both regards. Less than 10 days later, on July 27th, 10-year-old Brenda Faye Crockett had been sent to the grocery store by her mother. When Brenda didn't come home, her parents began to search the neighborhood in hopes of locating their daughter. While the parents were out searching, the family's phone rang. Brenda's 7-year-old sister answered the call to hear a tearful Brenda on the other side.
"A white man picked me up and I'm heading home in a cab,"
Brenda said. She told her sister that she thought she was in Virginia before promptly ending the call with a simple bye. Shortly after, Brenda's mother and stepfather returned home from their unsuccessful search. The phone rang again, and this time, Brenda's stepfather answered. Again, it was Brenda on the line, and she repeated the same information she had told her sister. Then, Brenda asked,
"Did my mother see me?"
Brenda told her stepfather she was now inside a home with a white man and that they were alone. Her stepfather pleaded with Brenda to put the man on the phone, but he heard heavy footsteps in the background, and Brenda responded,
"I'll see you,"
before hanging up. In the early morning hours the following day, Brenda's body was discovered along the roadside of US Route 50 in Maryland. Her body was found in the exact same manner as the other 2 victims, but she was left with a scarf tied tightly around her neck. With 3 victims in such a short time frame, the killer seemed to be accelerating. The calls placed to Brenda's family home were of particular interest to the investigators. Brenda had been crying at the beginning of the call, and the information she provided was oddly specific. Multiple times, Brenda repeated that she was with a white man, and she also stated that she was in Virginia, despite her body being found in Maryland. Investigators were almost certain that the killer had forced Brenda to say exactly what she'd been told, in an effort to throw police off the killer's true identity. The majority of the calls can be explained this way, but there was one question from Brenda that puzzled investigators. Did my mother see me? It's not clear what Brenda meant by asking this question, but it is possible that she might have been able to see her mother at some point during the abduction or while she was being held captive. Perhaps Brenda could see her mother during the period in which her parents had been searching the neighborhood, forcing the killer to make the phone calls and buy himself more time. It's haunting to think that Brenda's mother may have been so close to finding her daughter alive. After Brenda's murder, the killer went quiet for a few months. Then, on October 1st, 12-year-old K𝖎lling Yates was taken while walking home from the grocery store, sometime around 7 p.m. that night. Unlike the other victims, the killer did not keep K𝖎lling long. Her body was discovered a mere 3 hours later. Like the other victims, K𝖎lling had been assaulted and asphyxiated and was found without her shoes. Green fibers were found stuck to her clothing, but the source of those fibers could not be determined. A witness reported seeing K𝖎lling enter a blue Volkswagen, but police were not able to locate any vehicle matching that description. With the 4th abduction and murder of a young girl in the same area, area, the Daily News gave the killer his infamous moniker, the Freeway Phantom. Despite all the attention the case was now getting, investigators were no closer to making an arrest. The Freeway Phantom was, on all accounts, a ghost. About a month later, on November 15th, 18-year-old Brenda Denise Woodard was on her way home from dinner with a classmate. Brenda was seen boarding a city bus around 11:30 p.m. 6 hours later, a police officer out on patrol discovered Brenda's body, dumped behind a hospital, though not the same hospital as the first two victims. Unlike the previous victims, Brenda had not only been asphyxiated, she had been stabbed numerous times. She was also found still wearing her shoes, and a coat not belonging to Brenda was draped across her chest. Inside the pocket of the coat was a handwritten note. The text was written in a strange manner, with letters capitalized at random. The note read,
"This is tantamount to my insensitivity to people, especially women. I will admit the others when you catch me, if you can. Freeway Phantom."
Handwriting analysis determined that Brenda had written the note herself, on her own notebook paper. Strangely, they found no indications of duress in the handwriting, which you would expect to see if she'd been forced to write the note under threat of physical harm. Based on this, authorities concluded that Brenda likely knew or even trusted the person responsible for her abduction, torture, and murder. After Brenda's death, the Freeway Phantom disappeared. Then, almost a year later, on September 5th, 1972, the Freeway Phantom returned. 17-year-old Diane Denise Williams was returning home from visiting her boyfriend. She was seen boarding a city bus around 11 p.m. A few hours later, her body was found dumped along Highway I-295. To the horror of the responding officers, Diane had been found asphyxiated and without her shoes, the unmistakable MO of the Freeway Phantom. Although Diane's death was attributed to the same suspect, there was a distinct lack of sexual assault, which was a common theme among all the Freeway Phantom victims. This led some to believe that this was not the work of the Freeway Phantom, but the work of a copycat. Though there were a few suspects in the case, none of them were ever convicted for the murders. One suspect, Robert Elwood Askins, was a favorite of investigators. They obtained a warrant in 1978 to search Askins' home for any connection to the Freeway Phantom case, but the search yielded nothing aside from a court document containing the word tantamount, which had been included in the Phantom's coat pocket note. Though the word was not commonly used, this was an extremely circumstantial connection. Authorities went so far as to dig up Askins' yard, but they found nothing to link him to the case. Police also suspected a local gang, the Green Vega Rapists, as a potentially responsible party. Investigators interviewed a former gang member who was imprisoned on unrelated charges, and he provided them with information on the Freeway Phantom case that he'd been given by another former gang member. The information provided included the date, location, and a very specific detail that would have been known only to investigators and the Phantom himself. The former gang member who provided the information had a solid alibi that absolved him of any involvement, and he was insistent that his identity remain anonymous if he cooperated and aided the investigation. Shortly thereafter, a local politician trying to drum up support for his campaign announced there had been a major break in the Freeway Phantom case, and that this break had come from interviews with an inmate at Lorton Prison. Immediately after the press caught wind of this news, the inmate denied any further involvement with police and recanted all his previous statements. Today, the Freeway Phantom case remains unsolved. Poor record-keeping from the Metropolitan Police Department of the District of Columbia led to many of the original case files, interviews, and notes being lost throughout the years. Most of the files that exist on the Phantom today are incomplete. A $150,000 reward is available to anyone who provides information that assists in closing the case. According to a 2024 update from the city paper, a 1974 FBI Washington field office report may hold the keys to closing this case. The report allegedly contains details of a suspect who was nearly apprehended in 1971 following the murder of Brenda Denise Woodard. The suspect was never arrested, reportedly due to a lack of action on the part of two local police officers who did not act on the information they had. This report was set to be handed over to the city paper by an MPDC investigator, but it was never delivered. Allegedly, one Mary Ellen O'Toole, a former FBI agent who now works as a TV journalist, visited this MPDC investigator to review their files on the Freeway Phantom case. O'Toole brought in her own team to scan every piece of evidence they could get their hands on. Following their visit, the 1974 FBI field report was mysteriously missing from evidence. All that remains of the report is a portion recorded from a phone call the MPDC investigator had made. If this report truly contains the real identity of the Freeway Phantom, then the case will likely remain unsolved until such time when, or if, the contents of the the report are brought to light. For now, the Freeway Phantom remains a nameless, faceless ghost, and yet another tale from the underworld.